The airport was buzzing with travelers, announcements echoing across the terminal, and the scent of coffee lingering in the air. Among the sea of people, Maya stood quietly at gate 42, her hand resting on a worn leather bag. Her hair was neatly tied back, and her eyes scanned the crowd calmly. No one noticed her. No one ever did. A black woman in her late 30s wearing a maintenance jumpsuit didn't exactly draw attention, especially in a place where everyone seemed to be in a hurry. She wasn't supposed to be flying today. She wasn't even supposed to be seen. Maya was part of the overnight ground crew, a specialist in mechanical diagnostics, with a past no one asked about and credentials that collected dust. She knew aircraft better than most of the pilots she worked around. But no one asked. No one cared. Across the tarmac, Flight 728 was being prepped for takeoff. Maya had finished her checks just minutes ago. Everything was routine, until it wasn't. She noticed something in the engine readings during the pre-inspection, but when she flagged it to pilot, he brushed her off with a tight smile and said, "We've got it from here, sweetheart." She tried again calmly, respectfully, but this time he didn't even look up from his tablet, just turned away. She felt the familiar sting, but said nothing more. Now, seated at the very back of the plane as a standby passenger, Maya tried to shake off the tension. She wasn't on the clock. She wasn't in charge. But her gut wouldn't quiet down. 20 minutes into the flight, it happened. A loud bang rocked the aircraft. Gasps filled the cabin. The plane shuddered violently, dipping before leveling. Oxygen masks dropped like limp petals from above. The captain's voice cracked over the speaker, but it was shaky, uncertain. Maya's heart pounded. She looked out the window, then toward the cockpit door. People were panicking. The attendants were frozen. And then, something worse. The intercom went silent. No instructions. No orders. Just fear. And that's when Maya stood up. Every pair of eyes turned as Maya rose from her seat, steady despite the turbulence. The plane jerked again and someone screamed. Overhead bins popped open. A baby cried. But Maya moved forward, one step at a time, gripping seat back for balance. "Ma'am, sit down," when the flight attendants finally snapped out of her daze. Maya didn't stop. "Is the cockpit locked?" The attendant hesitated. "The captain? We haven't heard from him since the engine failure." Maya's voice was calm but firm. "Open the door. Now." "I can't. There's protocol." "Then you're wasting time." Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. There was no panic in her tone, only purpose. People noticed. Whispers began. "Who is she? Does she know something?" Maya pulled out her ID, an old laminated badge from a military flight school, tucked in her bag like a forgotten relic. "I was a U.S. Air Force flight instructor. I know this aircraft, and if you want to live, open that door." That changed everything. The attendant hesitated only a second longer before racing toward the cockpit. Moments later, the door creaked open. Inside, the scene was worse than expected. The co-pilot was slumped over, unconscious. The captain's face was pale, drenched in sweat. He clutched his chest, struggling to breathe. Heart attack. He barely registered Maya as she stepped in. She scanned the panel, warnings flashing red, autopilot off, engine 2 dead. Her fingers moved quickly, toggling switches, stabilizing the pitch. Her voice dropped to a murmur, like muscle memory speaking louder than fear. Behind her, the attendant whispered into the intercom, "She's flying a plane." Maya strapped in. Her hands were steady. "Control, this is Flight 728. Pilot incapacitated. I am assuming command." She spoke into the radio with practice calm. Static. Then a confused voice answered, "Repeat. Identify yourself." She didn't flinch. "Maya Robinson. Civilian now. Former Air Force. I need an emergency landing protocol. Engine 2 is out, and I got 180 lives depending on me." The silence on the other end felt eternal. Then, "Copy that, Ms. Robinson. You're in command." As Maya steadied the aircraft, her mind moved faster than the failing systems around her. Warnings still blinked, but she filtered through the chaos with sharp precision. Years of forgotten training surged back like instinct. Altitude check airspeed stabilizers. Her fingers moved swiftly, correcting the yaw as she adjusted for the dead engine. In the cabin, passengers clung to each other. Some prayed. Others just stared wide-eyed at the closed cockpit door. The fear hadn't left, but something had shifted. The woman they hadn't noticed before was now their only hope. Air traffic control came back on the radio. Flight 728, we've cleared a runway at Denver International. You'll need to descend rapidly. Are you familiar with Boeing's 737 emergency procedures? Yes, Maya replied without hesitation. But I'll need assistance monitoring fuel flow and flap pressure. The left hydraulics are sluggish. Copy that. We'll guide you in. Just stay with us. She toggled the intercom and spoke to the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Maya Robinson. I'm taking control of the aircraft. We've lost an engine, but we are stable and headed for an emergency landing. I need everyone calm. I need the crew focused. We will get through this. The voice didn't match the jumpsuit. It didn't match what people assumed when they saw her, but it was the voice of command, and people listened. In the back, a teenage boy whispered, "She's flying a plane, and she sounds like she's done this 1,000 times." Back in the cockpit, Maya wiped sweat from her brow. The captain gasped for air behind her, still alive but barely. She glanced back once, just to be sure. "Hang on, sir. We'll get you home." Control updated her on weather. Turbulence at lower altitudes. Crosswinds expected. Maya adjusted course slightly, choosing a smoother descent arc even though it added a few minutes. She needed those minutes. The runway was 60 miles out and coming fast. She checked the flaps. Partial response. Landing gear lights blink yellow. "Manual override," she muttered, pulling the alternate gear extension lever. It was stiff, old, but it obeyed. 30,000 feet. She took a deep breath. Then the second engine coughed. A low growl, like a warning. Her jaw clenched. "We're not going down today," she whispered. 24,000 feet and dropping fast. The failing second engine was sputtering like an exhausted runner, and every vibration to the yoke told Maya it wouldn't hold much longer. She kept her eyes locked on the panel, fingers dancing with quiet authority, recalibrating trim and throttle to stretch every ounce of life left in the machine. Air traffic control broken again. "Flight 728, you're descending too quickly. Recommend easing off pitch by 5 degrees. Maya's voice stayed calm. "Negative. With one engine and gear down, I need speed for control. We'll bleed altitude safely in the last 15 miles. Trust me." A pause. Then, "Roger that. We're with you." Behind her, the flight attendant who had let her into the cockpit now stood pressed against the wall, eyes wide. "Do you need anything?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Yes. Go back out there and keep everyone calm. Tell them to brace in 10 minutes. And thank them for trusting me." The attendant nodded, then turned, the tension in her shoulders replaced by something close to reverence. Maya's hand stayed firm. Her mind flashed to her first solo flight, years ago, in an empty Arizona sky. Back then, she was the only black woman in her aviation program, constantly underestimated, constantly tested. But up there, in the silence between clouds, she was always in control. 15,000 feet. The turbulence picked up. The plane jolted hard left. An alarm screamed again. Engine 2 was all but gone now, revving weakly, then fading. She shut it down manually before it failed on its own. Better to do it clean than have it explode. Passengers gasped as the plane dipped. Oxygen masks dangled unused. Most were too scared to even move. Maya's voice returned to the intercom. "We've lost both engines. We're gliding, but I'm guiding us in. Stay strong. Stay buckled." Gasps turned to sobs. Prayers whispered between clenched teeth. 10,000 feet. The airport was in sight now, a tiny gray strip framed by distant mountains. But with no thrust, it might as well have been 100 miles away. She studied the descent angle, wind resistance, lift, and made her call. "I'm going to land it dead stick. Full glide. No engines." Control stammered. "Are you sure?" Maya didn't hesitate. I've done it before, but never with 180 lives watching. 5,000 feet. The ground was rising fast. Trees, roads, tiny buildings all coming into terrifying detail. The Boeing 737, now a silent giant in the sky, sliced through the wind with only gravity pulling it forward. Maya adjusted the nose down gently, keeping the angle sharp enough to glide, but soft enough not to stall. In the cabin, passengers had fallen completely silent. Some held hands. Others clutched the seats. Every heart beat in rhythm with the descent. Inside the cockpit, Maya was a storm of focus. She checked airspeed, barely within safe landing range. Flaps were still half responsive. The gear had dropped, but without hydraulics, braking would be another challenge. She knew she had one chance. One shot to touch down clean. Control, I'm coming in hot. I'll need emergency crews on standby. I can't promise brakes. I'll try to flare late to bleed speed. Runway is cleared. Foam is being laid. Everyone is ready, Ms. Robinson. You're doing great. The voice on the other end had changed. It wasn't formal now. It carried awe. 2,000 feet. The runway was directly ahead now. Maya took one final breath. You got this, she whispered to herself. She toggled the intercom one last time. Brace, brace, brace. Below, fire trucks and ambulances lined the edge of the tarmac. Air traffic control watched from towers, binoculars shaking in nervous hands. Pilots in other cockpits stood silently, listening in. 1,000 feet. The aircraft cut through the last stretch of open sky. Maya pulled gently back on the yoke, nose rising just enough to slow the descent. The belly of the plane groaned. Wind howled across the fuselage. 500. She held steady. No fear. No panic. 200. The runway raced up. 50. A thunderous slam echoed as the plane's wheels hit the ground, bouncing once hard, then slamming down again. Sparks flew. The cabin screamed. Maya gritted her teeth, holding the nose level, both hands firm as she fought to keep the aircraft centered. The plane barreled down the runway, tires screeching. She tapped the manual brake override. But with failed hydraulics, it was all pressure and hope. The plane was still going over 100 knots, runway vanishing ahead. And then, a final tug, a jolt, silence. They had stopped. She had landed it. For a moment, no one moved. Smoke rose from the tires. The acrid scent of burnt rubber filled the cabin. A baby cried softly. Somewhere near the front, someone whispered, "We're alive." Then, like a wave breaking, the silence shattered into cheers. Shouts of disbelief. Applause. Sobs. Strangers embraced. Flight attendants dropped to their knees, crying from relief. A woman clutched her husband's arm and whispered, "She saved us. That woman saved us." Inside the cockpit, Maya sat still, her hands resting on the controls. Her heart pounded, but her breath stayed steady. The adrenaline was still flooding her veins, but her face was calm. Ground crews were rushing toward the aircraft, flashing lights surrounding them like stars after storm. The cockpit door opened behind her. A flight attendant stepped in, eyes wide, voice trembling. "They're calling you a hero." Maya unstrapped herself slowly, glancing back once at the unconscious captain, now being tended to by paramedics. "I didn't fly for praise," she said quietly. "I flew because someone had to." As she stepped out into the aisle, the passengers erupted. Some stood despite orders not to. A man in a business suit bowed his head. The teenage boy from earlier gave her a shaky thumbs up, eyes shining. A woman clapped with trembling hands. No one cared about her jumpsuit now. No one overlooked her. They saw her. By the time the emergency slide deployed and the passengers began disembarking, news cameras had already swarmed the runway perimeter. The story was breaking live. "Black woman saves doomed flight," the headline blared. But that wasn't what Maya saw. She saw the captain being wheeled into an ambulance alive. She saw families stepping off together. She saw a little girl waving at her with wide, grateful eyes. Reporters shouted her name. Microphones were thrust in her face, but she said nothing. She walked across the tarmac as if she didn't hear them, toward the edge of the runway, where her bag had been brought from the cabin. She picked it up. Worn leather, just like her. One official ran up to her. "Ms. Robinson, we'd like to talk about reinstating your license. Maybe more." She turned, the sun setting behind her. "I never lost it," she said quietly, and walked on,